Hey guys, hello and welcome everyone. So thank you first of all for joining us today from different corners of the world. As you all know that PCI Security Standard Council published the long awaited version of PCI Data Security Standard last week. So the 12 core requirements fundamentally remains the same, but it's been redesigned to focus on security objectives to guide on how security controls should be implemented. Well, I, Bharat Malik, your host for the session today, welcomes you all once again for the Fireside chat on PCI DSS 4.0, which is a paradigm shift to continuous compliance, customization, and much more. So as you can see on the screen, some quick facts about CISA. We are a forensic-driven global cybersecurity company, having a customer base from more than 40 countries. We have served more than 2,000 customers across the globe. And one more interesting fact to note over here is that we are also one of the top 4 global payment forensic investigators. Not only this, we are also a renowned brand recognized by various payment schemes. And we are also accredited by CREST and a trusted service provider for vulnerability assessment and penetration testing services. Moving on. So for today's fireside chat, these are some of the housekeeping items. So the fireside chat will last for 40 minutes and that will include your Q&A. All the attendees will be in listen only mode. You can submit your questions via Q&A section. And now that I am pleased to introduce our esteemed guest for the session today, Mr. Nitin Bhatnagar, which is, of course, you know him very well. He's a very renowned face, and directly from the PCI Council, we have him over here today, and who has been tirelessly working in increasing the adoption and awareness of the PCI security standards in India. Welcoming our moderator, Mr. Kaushik Pandey, who has been handling various global certification consultations ranging from different PCI standards, ISO, and other domestic regulations as well. So without any further delay, I would like to request Kaushik to please take over the platform. And thank you so much. Kaushik, over to you.
Thanks a lot, Bharat. And good afternoon, everyone, whosoever has joined from India. And I believe that at some point in time, there will be good evening as well. Some point in time, good morning as well when the people have joined from GC. So thanks a lot for joining today's session. And we are so happy that Nitin has joined us. I know it's very hard to get time from Nitin, specifically when DSS 4.0 has been launched. All the industry stakeholders are calling Nitin right now that, okay, please come for us and accordingly speak about it, because the entire industry right now is looking forward from the feedback of the PCI Council, because this has been actually a paradigm shift. This has been a major release from PCI from quite some time. Based upon their cycle, if you'll see, after 3.2.1, they took a lot of time to understand the entire payment ecosystem. And then accordingly, they have come out with the DSS 4.0. So thanks a lot, Nitin, for joining us today on this particular session over here.
Thank you, Kaushik. Thank you, CISA. Thank you.
Great.
Thank you for inviting me.
Thanks a lot, Nitin. So as soon as we start the session as well, I believe that, okay, the industry stakeholders who have joined us would like to know this particular slide which talks about the implementation, because I believe that the people who, let's say, have to abide by the PCI requirements and controls, and in India, based upon the RBI as well, will be coming down drastically and saying that, okay, yes, you have to show us the compliance. How exactly the implementation timeline looks like?
See, according to me, Kaushik, I think that's a very good question to start this fireside chat. I think you're setting the context for next couple of years. So implementing the PCI DSS, see, it's going to be a 2-year project, and please do not think that you can wait until 31st March of 2024, which you see on the slide currently, to get started. So that's the first disclaimer that I would want to give it to your audience and to the payment industry. See, idea here is to emphasize that still 2 years seems a long time between the release of the new standard and the date when the 3.2.1 it retires. Actually, and especially for larger firms, for the large corporate firms, I'm talking about banks, you can take large merchants, it is very little time included. Indeed, it's right. So organizations here need to start planning now to make the most of the time they have available at this point. So using the I'm going to take an old age the situation, which talk about the plan, do, check, act. And I'm going to tell you now how we should be borrowing this old age principle to implement the DSS version 4.0. So this is how I am going to see you spending next 2 years. So plan, how you are going to plan. So first thing first, you will need to read the new standard and understand all of the changes that have been made, and importantly, how they will affect your organization, right? So that's the first foremost step that you need to take. Do set up a task force and groups to start implementing the necessary changes for your organization. Check, work with your QSA to carry out a gap analysis. Have your QSA undertake a gap analysis to point out where changes need to be made to ensure you meet the new requirements. That's very, very important. And that's where the last comes, act. Implement the necessary work so that for your 2024 assessment, you are and will continue to meet the PCI DSS requirements. So that's how I see the plan, do, check, and act old age principle that we used to follow in various audit methodologies. I think this is the best way that how you can start implementing the various timelines that you see on your screen to meet the certain objectives of PCI DSS version 4.0. Over to you, Kaushik.
Thanks a lot for that, Nitin. And I believe that the entire audience would have got the context as well of the DSS 4.0 along with the timelines. The implementation, the planning for the implementation starts from today onwards. Actually, it should have started from March 31st onwards, the day, let's say, when it was launched. But yes, the implementation starts from today onward, the planning of it. And firstly, in that particular phase, you have to understand the standard first before even just going ahead and implementing it across. Okay, so understanding of the standard will play a very, very crucial role. PCI is coming out with PCI 4.0 symposium as well later at the point of June. And I believe this is the first time when PCI is doing so as well, because they do understand there's a drastic change from the last standard to this standard. So it's very important to understand the interpretation of the council as well before organizations start implementing it, before QSA starts attesting or attestation as well of compliance over there. Okay, so those are the timelines, how exactly it looks like. And before, let's say, without any for the subdue, let's start the fireside chat. I'll stop sharing my screen. And today, as you guys rightly know, on the hot seat, we have Nitin. So now we'll start, let's say, firing questions for Nitin so that accordingly we can understand the PCI DSS 4.0. So as we are talking about so much new things happening, right? Even the payment ecosystem, each and everything is changing drastically altogether. And PCI has launched a standard after quite an R&D. They have spent long hours. We have been a part of the GEAR calls, the GEAR committee meetings and all. And PCI 4.0 was an agenda item, which I believe from the past 2 to 3 years, it has never gone off the track. In each and every meeting, it was there. Correct. So what are the major new requirements which has been released, Nitin, in this particular, let's say, standard?
Sure. Before I answer that question, I would like to thank all the stakeholders from the industry, including the people who have contributed, the QSA companies, the participating organizations. In fact, we have 3 RFCs. We have close to 6,000 plus feedback received from 200 plus companies. I think that's a huge number for us when we are creating a milestone, when we are trying to achieve a standard like DSS 4.0. And I think that was really marvelous for us to receive such a kind of feedback. And to answer your question, Kaushik, I think, see, while the 12 requirements, the core PCI DSS requirements remains fundamentally the same. So several new requirements address evolving risks and threats to the payment data and to reinforce security as a continuous process. So some examples that I would like to walk you through is requirement to prevent and detect the phishing attacks. So there are 2 new requirements that have come, requirement number 5.4.1 and specifically 12.6.3.1. The one is, I think, the processes and automation mechanism to detect and protect the personnel against the phishing attack. And the second, the security awareness training for phishing and related attacks and social engineering. So how the requirements are evolving on the authentication requirements, including the multi-factor authentication for all access into the cardholder data environment. This will replace current requirement for MFA for all access into the CDE by administrative personnel. So the requirement for multi-factor authentication for remote access from outside the entity's network remain the standard. Another requirement that has changed, increased in the password length from 7 to 12 characters due to the feedback that we have received that 7 is no longer sufficient with the current computing power. Another is use of group shared generic accounts. This was prohibited in requirement number 3.2.1 earlier, but is now allowed if managed in accordance with the elements stated in the requirement. Also, there are 2 new e-commerce requirements to address e-commerce skimming attacks. So there are these are few requirements that I can just highlight for the audience perspective. This has been included in the version 4.0 of the PCI standard.
Great, thanks a lot for that, Nitin. And actually, that sets the I believe the criterion as well. That this time the standard has not just focused on one particular kind of environment or an organization. It has gone beyond, above and beyond each and everything, whatever we can think about, right? So which is really, really good over here. Yeah. Okay, so I think that we have, we are not short of time as of now, but soon enough we will be. Okay, so the timetable for organizations to become compliant, that is something which you have already addressed, I believe, and the audience also got to know the same. Now comes the big question, which is around the customized approach. Now, it's the first time when the industry is facing such a change from PCI. They haven't seen it, right? Till date. They were looking at PCI as a mandatory standard, as a requirement, as a control, and they have to implement the same way what the standard says, right? Yeah. But the customized approach is actually the paradigm shift what we are talking about. So any comments on it, Nitin?
Yeah, I think, the customized approach, I think it's a very good question, I think, Kaushik, and I think it's very important for the stakeholders to also understand the customized approach is a new validation option in addition to what we call the defined approach, which is the traditional way of doing and meeting the PCI DSS requirements and testing procedures, which I'm sure everyone on this webinar is familiar with. Now, and we call it defined approach, right? So the defined approach follows the traditional PCI DSS requirements and testing procedures to confirm that the requirements are in place. The QSA companies go on site and they follow the standard policies and procedures, and then implementation happens. The customized approach here provides you with a flexibility for organizations to achieve the security objective of a requirement in a different way than the defined approach. Now, when I say in a different way, with a customized approach here, the entities determine controls that they will implement to meet the stated customized approach objective. But here, they are expected to still provide clear demonstration that the payment data is being protected. That's important. Now, this approach also supports organizations using security approaches that may be different from traditional PCI DSS requirements. The customized approach provides you the greater flexibility for organizations choosing to use alternate security controls, allowing for innovations in security technologies and methods, and flexibility for how the requirements apply to different environments. So this is the most important aspect, the flexibility that the stakeholders are going to get when they're going to choose the customized approach as one of the options to meet the PCI standard requirements.
Sure. Thanks a lot for that, Nitin. And for the layman audience, like let's say who resembles with me. So basically how it goes is that this particular customized option, which we have got, is there for the organization so that they can have a strategic end as well from their end when they are trying to implement the requirements. And they think that they have an actual control in place, which will be able to meet the objective of that requirement of the critical security control, the security risk, which the requirement is trying to supply, and then accordingly custom craft this control or requirement. That's how the customized approach goes for. But believe me, guys, it's not easy, because the entity will be required to draft that particular, let's say this particular customized approach, or let's say the customized objective, what they say in PCI terms, right? And then the assessor will be required to devise procedures to assess that particular control as well, based upon your custom approach, right? So it will go in different fashions altogether. And again, right now we are in a very initial phase to understand the requirement, to understand the PCI purview as well, the interpretation for the same. So we'll give, of course, a point of view on all these things, and we'll address the Q&A as well at some time. But I'm just giving you a very high-level picture that customized approach is a very drastic change which has happened. It doesn't, you can say, it's not a substitute for compensatory control, not at all. Compensatory control is different. It's still there in the standard, and objective way, or the customized approach is still different. But one particular thing, if you're using a customized approach, then you cannot use a compensatory control. Okay. It's either you're using compensatory control is a different thing. If you're using let's say a customized approach is a different thing altogether. Okay, so just giving you a high-level overview because we have a list of questions which we want Nitin to answer. But again, we can come back on this particular topic again as well in some time. So having said that, let's move on with this approach as well. Yeah. So there are many evolving technologies, Nitin, which we see right now in the market, right? Starting from cloud to mobile to IoTs, and let's say the others as well, whatever we can see right now. Yeah. So does the PCI 4.0 address all of these different technologies, whatever is in place?
Say, I think, Kaushik, as you know, I think you have been part of the GEAR committee also, right? So PCI DSS has always been technology neutral, and with the requirement based on the fundamental security principles that apply to all types of environments, right? Even if a type of a technology is not specifically called out in the standard, the intent of the security requirements is still applicable. That's always been a discussion in the industry, you know, whether we should do this, we should not do this. But we being a technology neutral, the requirements applies to all types of requirements. Now, specifically, if we talk about version 4.0, includes refocused requirements to better emphasize their broad applicability to all types of technology, and added objective statements to better support different technologies such as cloud environments. Now, in addition, version 4.0 includes, which we talked just about, the customized approach to support a range of evolving payment environments, technologies, methodologies for achieving security. Now, the customized approach here provides entities flexibility, which is, you will be hearing flexibility as a word when I talk about the customers more frequently. So if they're using different processes or technologies to achieve the requirement objective, this is important, right? So this clarifies what needs to be achieved with more flexibility in how the organization achieve the desired security outcome. So, for example, we have added to the scope of PCI DSS requirements section to call out cloud components. So we have also reworked Appendix A1, formerly, we have called it share hosting providers, now for multi-tenant service providers, with the definition of that term that clearly includes cloud providers. We have also included a new requirement that multi-tenant service providers have to support their customers for penetration testing. So this is where the DSS 4.0 is going to address various new evolving technologies such as mobile, cloud, whatnot.
Great, awesome. So just now, guys, you all of you have heard that the current standard, the DSS 4.0, has actually gone above and beyond and is trying to address each and every payment technology, whatever is in space. And that is something which even you can see from the very starting of the requirement 1, where they have removed the firewall and routers, and they are saying network security controls. So it doesn't matter whether you are on-prem or on cloud. Okay, if you have a network security control in place, or as a network security technologies in place, accordingly, you have to implement the requirements in the same fashion. Accordingly, the anti-phishing and let's say the others as well, along with the mandate of having a web application firewall for the public systems, including the application system accounts as well. So these are some drastic changes. I'm telling you guys, we are just touching, let's say, the top of the iceberg. So right now, the iceberg is so huge inside the ocean. that we'll have to drill it down and see that, okay, what will further changes are required. But absolutely, that's really helpful. On the customized approach, again, one particular question, Nitin. So what do you think that which kind of organizations are much more apt or much more suitable to go ahead with a customized approach? Or is it like for all, or a certain set of companies or organizations should go for a customized approach?
It's a very, very, very good question. I think I'm seeing some questions around that. So this approach is intended for entities with robust security processes and strong risk management practices. Now, it includes, but not limited to, a dedicated risk management department or an organization-wide risk management approach. This is very, very critical for an organization before they consider for their customized approach. And definitely, they have to have consensus with the qualified security SSC.
Got it. And how about the defined approach? Which kind of organization should?
Yeah, so defined approach supports entities with controls in place that meets the PCI requirements as stated. And this approach may also suit the entities that want more direction about how to meet security objectives, including entities new to information security or PCI cases. So that's where I would, the defined approach would be best fitted for the organizations who are new or entering into the space where they want to try how the implementation works. And then gradually when they grow, when they advance to the next level, that's where, as I said, having a dedicated risk management department or an organization-wide risk management approach would definitely help them choosing the customized approach. So that's how we have to balance between the defined approach and the customized approach.
Great, awesome. So again, the third part of the same question, can an organization use both? Means a defined approach and a customized approach?
I think most of the PCI requirements, Kaushik, can be met using either of the defined or the customized approach. However, several requirements do not have a stated customized approach objectives. The customized approach is not an option for these requirements. Now here, the entities can use both the defined and customized approaches within their environment. This means an entity could use the defined approach to meet some requirements and use the customized approach to meet other requirements. This also means that an entity could use defined approach to meet a given PCI DSS requirements for one system components or within one environment and use customized approach to meet the same PCI DSS requirement for a different system component or within the different environment. So in this way, PCI DSS assessment could include both defined and customized approaches. So it has to be, they can, it's not that they cannot, if they are going for defined approach, they cannot go for customized approach. They can use both, but it has to be designed in consensus with the qualified security assessment.
Got it. Fantastic. So I believe that, let's say, talking to a QSA or talking to an ISA is something which is required, so that organizations can also understand that which particular option would be best suited for them.
Correct.
Right. And also one particular thing I would like to add over here is that if, let's say, you are seeking advice of a QSA to for this custom craft, this customized approach, what we are talking about over here, the same QSA will not be able to attest your organization. Now, that is something which PCI has defined over there, that the same QSA, it might be the same QSA company, but not the same QSA. Means, let's say, if I'm going ahead and suggesting you a few controls with which you can come out with a customized approach, then the same QSA will not be able to help you attest that as well. So the conflict of interest clause of the governance practices, PCI this time is quite stringent. And that is the very reason why in each and every requirement, starting from requirement 1 till 11 or 12, they are talking about accountability. They are talking about responsibility. They're talking about that, okay, who exactly holds the responsibility and accountability to maintain all of the PCI controls for that particular set requirements. And they're quite stringent this time. because we have seen so many breaches happening across the globe in the past couple of years. Specifically, payment breaches have increased drastically. So it's the time to actually hold people accountable for that. Okay, who exactly is responsible for the same, and then accordingly act on it. So that's how the PCI is developing in the recent times. Okay, so one question again on the customized approach, because customized approach is a very hot topic, I should say, right? So who exactly determines that when exactly shall, let's say I as an organization should be using a customized approach?
I think I've already given an answer in my previous answers, but let me reiterate that.
Sure.
So this is a decision for each entity based on the entity's choice to implement the something other than the defined approach to achieve the requirements, defined objective. Here, entities should work with their QSA and acquirer to ensure the approach meets the requirements set forth in the PCI DSS for the customized approach and is acceptable to the acquirer. That's more important. So QSA plays a QSA that acquirer, the qualified security assistance companies like yours, and the acquirers plays an important role to set the context and define on what kind of approach is going to be acceptable to the acquirer.
Got it. So if my understanding goes correct over here, then the payment brands and the acquirers will be driving the sheer force from the top, and accordingly,
acquirer.
Okay.
The remit goes to the acquirer.
Got it.
So the acquirer, the QSAs are going to be, for example, a bank. The bank is they're an issuer and acquirer both, right? So they have to discuss with the QSAs and agree on an approach. For a service provider, similar way, the acquirer. So they have to agree the approach that a service provider or a vendor is going to follow to accomplish the certain level of compliances. So the QSAs here have to play an important role.
Got it. So in that sense, even the acquirers need to have a thorough knowledge of this customized approach, and then accordingly they can give the consultation, or so they can give advice to their merchants, service providers, and all whatever flies down over there. Correct. And then accordingly they can suggest them.
Yeah,
my understanding was correct. Okay, fantastic. Yeah. So how exactly PCI 4.0 has evolved on the authentication as well? Because majorly PCI has always been around confidentiality, has been around the access controls, how stringent it has to be. And they were the one of the first who came with the multi-factor authentication across the CDE. And that is actually a requirement right now that, okay, CDE, irrespective of your role and all, you have to have an MFA, you have to have a dual factor authentication. So what all changes have happened over there?
Yeah, I think Kaushik, you just highlighted the threat landscape is changing, right? So I think industry feedback and the threat landscape drove several changes to authentication requirements. And I think in DSS 4.0, I'll just walk you through some couple of examples that we had. And multi-factor authentication, we just talked. So this is a new requirement which is effective from 31st March 2025, that MFA is implemented for all access into the CD. So right, this is the major change. So which the updated standard also includes the clarification that MFA is required for both: one, access into the CD; second, remote access originating outside the entity's network, which I just highlighted in my previous answer also. And that applying it to one type of access does not replace the need to apply another MFA for the other access. So that's one of the authentication requirement that has evolved in DSS 4.0. The second one is on the passwords, passphrases. Now, increase in the password length from 7 characters to 12 based on the feedback that we have received. 7 characters is no longer sufficient based on the modern computing power. These 12 characters length will be effective 31st March 2025. Now, until then, entities are required to adhere to 7 characters in accordance with PCI DSS version 3.2.1. Retaining the requirements, we have retained the requirements to change passwords every 90 days, since for some entities, passwords are only protection they use, and changing them periodically can prevent formerly breached ones from being reused, right? So, however, the requirements to change passwords will only apply to systems without MFA. Example, if MFA is not implemented on systems that are in scope but not in the CD, right? For those systems protected with MFA, the password change requirements can be marked as NA. Now, another requirement has evolved is a group share generic accounts. Now, in version 3.2.1, you can watch use of these accounts was prohibited. Right? Now, this requirement was modified in version 4.0 such that the entities may use them if their use is managed. That is, exceptional circumstances only. Exception. I'm repeating, exceptional circumstances only. Limited time frame justification and approval, confirmation of user identity and actions attributable to the individuals. So this is what are the requirements that have evolved around authentication. And I think this is important for every stakeholder to understand, so to avoid any conflicts and confusion.
Got it. Thanks for that, Nitin. And I believe that, yes, we are going for the time as well. Okay, so another question, and that will be from the assessor community. That from when exactly we can start doing the assessments on DSS 4.0?
I'm sure there may be assessors also from other companies joined in your webinar today. I think it's a very straight answer today, because as we talked about, plan, do, check, tag. It's a planning phase, right? So no one will be qualified to perform immediately the PCI DSS version 4.0 assessments immediately after the release of the standard. But planning is equally important, where you start reading the standard. Now, there will be a time gap to allow assessors and organizations to become familiar with the standard. Now, first training that we all know is available in June 2022. And this training will be a transitional training, meaning it will cover what has actually changed in this standard and in reporting. There will be an exam following the computer-based training to test the knowledge of PCI DSS version 4.0. And eventually, the transitional training will be rolled into a requalification training. So this is what assessors should consider, before they start performing the PCI DSS version 4.0 assessments. And considering this is a planning phase, there's a lot of efforts that should go in making the stakeholders ready, understand on the standard, and by that time to execute the assessments and planning for DSS 4.0 implementation. And just to repeat, large organizations, I would re-emphasize here, the large organizations, please don't think that 31st March 2024 we have sufficient time. No, you have to start. You can't wait till that time. You have to definitely start now. Planning, and plan, then do, act, and check.
Great, awesome. Thanks for that, Nitin. And one particular thing also for because we have been talking a lot about that we have to start from right now with respect to understanding the requirements, understanding the standard, and everything. Scoping will be playing a very, very crucial role in the coming months because PCI now has a requirement itself, which talks about that annually you have to revalidate the scope. And for service providers, it's 6 months. So service providers, as usual, the requirements are much more stringent for you. So service providers, every 6 months, you have to again validate the scope and the data discovery tools and all those things is something which you can use. So that accordingly you can understand and see that, okay, how big is your scope, or let's say how small is your scope, or what other changes are happening. So that's something which is there for you. All right. Next question will be on the new emerging technologies, Nitin. We have blockchain, we have IoTs, and then specifically if you're talking about the Indian payment ecosystem, we have the UPI, we have the BNPL, and a number of different things, right? How exactly DSS 4.0 addresses these different technologies as well?
So I think when we talk about technologies, the only word comes in my mind is neutral. We are neutral. So PCI DSS has always been technology neutral, one, and in that the requirements are intended to apply to all types of requirements. Even if, I'm repeating this, what I have repeated earlier, even if a type of technology is not specifically called out in the standard, the intent of the security requirements is still largely applicable. Version 4.0 includes for refocusing requirements and adding objective statements to better support different technologies. So I think that's kind of a two-liner answer to the new emerging technologies or the new payment forms that you see today in the country have to do with with securing the payment data. Now, in addition, the PCI DSS version 4.0 includes the customized approach for most requirements, specifically to provide entities that have implemented strong risk management practices with more flexibility if they're using the different ways to achieve the requirements during their defined objectives. So what I'm trying to say is yes, the DSS 4.0 is the key where you can start adopting and implementing the requirements, and you have a customized approach which is there always to help you, which gives you more flexibility to implement these requirements in different environments. Definitely.
Fantastic, Uday. And I believe just borrowing some words from Nitin's thing over here, risk assessment, focused risk assessment will be playing a very, very crucial role in DSS 4.0 planning and like the plan, do, check, act, the way Nitin said. Risk assessment, focused risk assessment for your PCI scope, where you are taking the critical assets like, let's say, the card data, the sensitive authentication data, the card numbers and everything, that will play a very, very big role right now. Because if you're looking for a customized approach, or you are looking for, let's say, compensatory controls, or you're taking about anything change, even many of the frequencies as well inside the new standard are risk driven. Actually in requirement 11, if you'll see, PCI is no longer just talking about the critical and the high vulnerabilities. When you talk about the internal vulnerability assessment, they're talking about that, okay, even the medium and the low as well. See from your risk assessment, from your risk treatment plan, that, okay, how soon you should be mitigating even those, let's say, things. And then accordingly, they will be able to, let's say, help organizations do the same. Okay, so they are quite stringent this time when it comes to, and also on the same vulnerability assessment, authenticated scans is a must, guys. That's what PCI has come out, because they have understood that forensics breaches would have been saved if authenticated scans would have been performed. So even, let's say, the implementation timelines, whatever we are looking at, as Nitin is rightly mentioning, it's short. It's short for all of us. We have to start reading, understanding the requirements starting from today onwards, so that by the June symposium, once let's say PCI comes out and starts interpreting requirements for all of us, we completely understand, then accordingly we can let's say move ahead on the same pattern. So before going to the Q&A,
that's true.
Thanks a lot, Nitin. So before going for the Q&A, this is what exactly Nitin has been saying for so long, just reiterating the same, the plan, do, check, act. So the transition period starts from the, let's say, the mid of Q1, which has already started. Right now, you have to plan for it. By June is something where we'll be able to understand that, okay, how exactly the requirements have changed from a PCI perspective, because they'll be able to give us the interpretation for the same, along with the supporting documents of ROC, AOC, the trainings and whatever is required, along with the prioritized approach worksheets and the different things, whatever might be required as well. Okay, and then accordingly we'll check and act, and accordingly by Q2 of 2025 is somewhere where the existing requirements, which are considered, or say the new requirements, which are considered as the best practice, will be termed as now the actual requirements, or which has to be maintained, which has to be implemented by organizations across the globe. Okay, so these are the timelines, and I believe by Q1 end is where PCI DSS 3.2.1 will just go off, and then accordingly organization cannot get certified on the same. So that's how let's say things are getting revolved. Right. So that opens a flow for the questions for the Q&A. So I believe Bharat, you'll be taking care of the Q&A. Let us know, please.
Yeah, Kaushik. So we have got enormous responses from the attendees. So I don't know with the time limit that we have, whether we'll be able to cover all of it or not, but yes, we'll try our best. So one question that I have is from the anonymous attendee is that if an organization gets recertified on January 2024, and the following certification is done in January 2025, can they still be certified on version 3.2.1? Because version 4 will be cut off from March 2025. I hope I was able to communicate the question right, Kaushik?
Yeah, so what I understand is that January 2024, you want to get certified on 3.2.1, if I'm not mistaken.
They are saying that if an organization gets certified, recertified on January 2024, and the following certification is to be done in January 2025, can they still be certified on version 3.2.1?
Okay, so and this for the complete audience, try to understand from this perspective, guys. As soon as PCI launches the ROC, AOC, and everything, right, you guys can start getting certified on version 4.0. Okay, from that time onwards. But it's just like the new requirements will be considered a best practice over there. Okay, it will not be considered an actual requirement. So as soon as, let's say, after the June symposium, once they are out, all of us can, let's say, start getting certified on the DSS 4.0, and then accordingly we can plan our way as well around the same. Okay, so that's how PCI has always been in the same way. They'll be going ahead as well. However, if you organizations want to go with 3.2.1 itself, then absolutely in 2024 itself, let's say if they are doing in Q1, that's what you're saying in January, then you can get certified on 3.2.1. But the next one, the next certification which you will do, you will have to do on version 4.0, because in 2024 itself, the 3.2.1 will retire. You can no longer use it after the particular time period, and you have to only rely on version 4.0. So that will be an answer. Nitin, if you want to add anything.
I think pretty much, I think you can show the slide of the implementation timeline. I think that gives audience a little more clarity on the implementation, because that's it. If you see on the slide, 31st March 2024, PCI DSS version 3.2.1 retire. So that's where all entities have to shift to version 4.0. So I think, and that's the reason the 2 years of transition timeline, transition phase that we call, is just to understand on your environments. You have to understand on the standard how well it is going to get fitted to your requirements currently. You have to be in touch with definitely with your QSs to get it right, and importantly, not to miss on this timeline of Q1 of 2024.
Great, awesome, thanks a lot.
Great.
Bharat.
So the second question that we have is on the data encryption. So it's been asked that, do we have any changes on data encryption?
Yes, there has been a few changes. And the change was, of course, because the other change with respect to the cryptographic key management operations and everything was always revolving around the NIST's special publication. So as soon as the NIST's special publication changes, accordingly, the encryption standard as well over here changes in PCI. But one particular drastic change which has happened is around the disk encryption. So now those times are gone when, let's say, we can say that, okay, we have implemented disk encryption on any of the hard drives as well, and can accordingly say that, okay, we do not need a file or a column level encryption over there. PCI has said disk level encryption is only for removable media now. If you are doing disk encryption on any other media devices, this non-removable media device, even then you have to do a file level or column level encryption on top of it. Okay, so that is one of the biggest change when it comes to encryption. And again, borrowing the word from Nitin, you have to look at the standard. You have to start reading it, because there are lots and lots of changes on the same pattern, which will impact your organization in some or the other way. Nitin, if you want to add anything.
I think pretty much, I think Kaushik, you got it covered. I think I leave that decision to CISA. We can do a second round of webinar with more questions, and we can cover the technical aspects as well, because this is more towards to get audience understand where we are today and how we should be moving forward, preparing you throughout the journey so that you have a smooth implementation and transition timelines to accomplish DSS 4.0. And I think that's where I think the QSS plays an important role.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Nitin. Thanks, Kaushik.
Let's take a last question, and the other question we can release an FAQ as well.
Absolutely. We'll do that. So the last question, I think it's very important. So, I mean, I'll merge two questions into one, Kaushik, if you can allow me, please. Because the question is around the contractors, third-party contractors, and I feel there has been a lot of confusion around in the industry about the third-party contractors. It states that How about third-party contractors and their approach to customized environment? Is that workable? And the second part of the question is, when is CISA launching a PCI 4.0 training?
Okay. So PCI 4.0, so I'll answer the second question. So PCI 4.0 training, it will be coming down in April itself. Okay, so please be ready for it. PCI 4.0 is coming down in April itself. Now, going back to the first question, if you can repeat the question again, because that was a short one.
Okay. Kaushik drive away from the business opportunity.
we have to, Nitin. Yeah, we have.
All right. So it says that, how about third-party contractors and their approach to customized environment? Is that workable?
So, see, third-party contractors is not a category based upon PCI. PCI has only two categories. Either you are a service provider or a merchant. Okay. So I'm taking the liberty over here to assume that third-party contractor is a service provider, which we are talking about. So service providers, absolutely. Anybody can go ahead with a customized approach, whatever has been given by PCI, irrespective you're a merchant or a service provider, or let's say an acquiring institution or a bank, any of those. And as rightly mentioned by Nitin, we should consult the QSA and the acquiring institution as well before going ahead for the same, because a QSA would be able to help you in, let's say, devising, or let's say, helping you understand if it's required or not. And the acquirers would be able to understand the risk associated with it. And then accordingly, let's say they'll be able to go. Because if you'll see the appendix, starting from appendix D, then appendix E, E1, E2, okay? The PCI has been like a thorough this time. Yeah. So if you'll see, there are two separate matrix which has to be filled up if you are planning to go for a customized approach. And they have said that these are the minimum things which you should document, irrespective of, let's say, whatever you're. And those particular things are also requirement specific. When it's requirement specific, it means that if you are filling up for, let's say, 3 requirements, 4 requirements, then 4 different, you can say, controls, or the 4 different subsets you have to fill over there, along with the focused risk approach. So the customized approach and everything looks very fancy right now. It's fancy too. But the actual implemented, the interpretation from PCI is something which we should, let's say, hold for as of now. Should wait till June symposium. PCI will be able to give much more clarity on the same, and then accordingly. So as Nitin said, as of now, let's focus on reading the standard and trying to understand, okay, what else changes have happened in the standard. Nitin, anything you want to add?
No, I think that's pretty much fine. I think only thing is that what we are talking about QSs is because the qualified security assets are the one point of contact for every DSS 4.0 training that is going to happen. And the first transition training that I highlighted is going to happen in June. And that's one of the reasons why we have been talking about QSs, because they are the first point of contact for the council to get these trainings and get themselves abreast on how the implementation of these requirements are going to work. That's more important. And lastly, just wanted to add for everyone's interest is, I think, please, PCI SSC also encourage here, the organizations to participate, attend all our PCI SSC events. And I think symposium is one which just Kaushik been highlighting. It's happening in June, and the North American Community Meeting, which is happening in Toronto and Canada on 13th and 15th September. And the European Community Meeting happened in Milan, Italy on 18th and 20th October. Please do attend these events, as and when it happens. The PCI Security Standard Council website event web page is always getting updated with more information. And last but not the least, if you are a payment card industry or payment industry stakeholder, please see if you can contribute, if you can join us as a participating organization, because that's where the lot of feedback comes to us, and you're able to influence these standards. And obviously, tomorrow when the standards grows because of the industry feedback, these standards are getting more robust and more concrete, where we are able to help secure the payment data. That's my last parting remarks, and I would like to thank CISA for giving us opportunity to be here and contribute and create that kind of education awareness around DSS 4.0. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Nitin, over here. And actually, it has helped us a lot. For the participants, if you're looking for exact changes that, okay, what all changes have happened or what is the new standard and everything, it's available on the PCI securitystandards.org, the document library section. Over there, you'll find all the relevant details around, let's say, the DSS 4.0 at a given point in time, right? Apart from that, if you want to hear the point of view of CISA as well on the standard, we have released a few blogs as well, which will help you understand as to how exactly things have changed, what are requirements, what let's say major requirements have changed as well. And just stay upfront. In the coming weeks, we'll be coming down with numerous resources which will help you in understanding of the DSS 4.0. One particular blog we have already released, the others are in pipeline. The customized approach, we'll be releasing a dedicated blog for the same. And even these kinds of sessions, the Fireside Chat is something which is just the phase one. It's just something which we are getting started with. Okay. The other events are just on the pipeline. It will be coming your way through. We'll be inviting different industry stakeholders as well. So that they can also talk about the PCI 4.0, what exactly is their stance, what exactly they have understood as well. And then we'll call the council, Nitin as well, and based upon, of course, his availability, he's a busy guy. So that to understand that, okay, how exactly PCI council takes it, how exactly the industry takes it, and accordingly we'll go ahead. So without wasting any further time, thanks a lot for joining in, guys, and have a very good day ahead. Thank you so much.